It is an error to say that the presence of this planet or that throws up an influence on people according to their birth under certain stars. Astrology is the same type of ignorance that attributes the sun the throwing off of light and heat, and of possessing attraction of gravitation, and of throwing off rings to make planets. Man has ever sought in physical things for the cause of this and the cause of that, and builds up certain tables and diagrams, and calls it science or philosophy. If on one morning he puts on the left shoe first, and something happens that day, he proves that by putting on the new shoe, it was lucky. He has a philosophy. By the tides, he proves the cause of the moon, or by the moon, the cause of the tides. Anything under the sun that is physical, rather than search in the subtle and potent unseen worlds. Let it be premised then that the Etherean firmament is not a waste and interminable nothingness, that on the contrary, it is many regions, even between the earth and the sun, sufficiently dense for a physical man to dwell upon and to walk about, even as on the earth. Some of these are as transparent as water or clear glass, and some opaque. Some of these Etherean worlds are large as the earth, and certain diseases were common. In certain places of the earth, man has at times, thousands of years ago, acquired great knowledge and virtue, but his whole country in after centuries became a wilderness. It is not the place of a prophet to answer these things by the accusation of ignorance or war. A prophet must account for that tendency in man to fall into ignorance and into war. In other words, he must find the cause of causes. At certain periods of time, for hundreds of years, nations have dwelt in peace and have risen in virtue, and then turned to war within themselves and gone down in death. The prophets of old divided time cycle into cycles of 3,000 years with slight variations, and they found that at such periods of time some certain impulse came upon the people, causing them to try to be better and wiser. Even as the same feeling in this day manifests itself in many nations across the world. The scale then rises for 400 years, more or less, and after that, wars and epidemics come upon the people. They begin to decline, especially in virtue and peace, but the general intelligence suffers little for another 600 or 700 years, after which time they destroy their libraries and records and reduce themselves to ignorance and vice. Then follows a darkness of 1,000 or more years with slight intermissions. In another 600 years, the physical senses and intellect begin to ascend. Self-conceit comes upon them, and they think they are the beginning of wisdom on earth. Then comes another cycle of light. Universal forces descend, and new revelations crop up in every quarter. Inspiration comes upon people, and they go to the opposite extreme: superstition and obedience to unseen influences. Such then is the general character and behavior of man during a cycle, and he rises and falls in all these particulars as regularly as the tides of the ocean. That man may begin to comprehend these things and learn to classify them so as to rise in wisdom and virtue, and thus overcome these epidemic seasons of cycles, these revelations are chiefly made. The force has positive and negative power for ever going to and escaping from the earth. Without these, no creature could live on the earth. The negative power of the force imparts to man his corporeal growth and desires, passions, and so forth. According to the corporeal solutions in the firmament and their precipitations to the earth as to quantity and quality, so will man be affected and inclined to manifest. These influences are easily discernible by some persons. One is depressed by a dull day, another inclined to drunkenness and fighting. By a bright day, man is inspired to energy. A psychic is so susceptible to vortexian currents of the force that they can realize the qualities of a medicine whilst it is yet in a glass bottle by merely holding it up with their hand, or know the character of the writer of a letter by holding the letter in their hand. Yet all this is accomplished by the vortexian current of the force. In the vast ethereal firmament of the universe are vast crystal-like structures, some thousands of times larger than our solar system. Some are like immense copies of snowflakes, with arches thousands of miles high and broad. Some of them are like oceans of water, some are transparent and some opaque, and some of them are like dense clouds of ashes. But so great are the numbers and so vast the varieties of these thousands of millions of ethereal worlds that description is impossible. By the telescope and the power of the Earth's force atmospheric lens, these worlds are magnified so as seem to be entities. Worlds in solution, the ethereal heavens, are therefore governed by no power in or escaping from physical worlds. In the language of the ancient prophets, they are a law unto themselves, and yet these unseen worlds have much power and influence on the forces of physical worlds. In making observations with the spectroscope, their otherwise unseen worlds are sometimes seen, but in a general way the spectroscope reveals only the refraction of high altitudes of the Earth's force vortex. It is an error to say the spectrum divides the sun's rays per se. It is an error to say the spectroscope has revealed certain colours in the atmosphere or photosphere of the sun or other stars. Its revelations for the most part pertain to what is contained in the force lens of the earth, no matter whether the view be toward the sun or another star.